The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association is providing this podcast as a public service for informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host or guest of this podcast are their own and may not reflect those of the BSSA, employees of the BSSA, or any of its officials. Any reference to a specific product, entity, opinion, issue, or other such item does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation thereof by the BSSA. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association.
What drives Scott Kent to get up every day, put this uniform on, and go serve your people?
As a tenured sheriff, you still have new things thrown at you once in a while. So that's what's kept me interested in it. This job is still exciting to me. I still have a purpose every morning when I wake up. I enjoy getting up and going to work every day.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast, where we'll introduce sheriffs and deputies across Ohio. During this conversation, you'll get to know the men and women serving you and hear all about the good work being done in the Buckeye State every day. Now let's join your host, Paulding County Sheriff Jason Landers, and today's special guest.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff Scott Kent from Crawford County. I'm Jason Landers, a sheriff in Paulding County, the host of today's podcast. Sheriff Kent, welcome in from Crawford County. In the studio in Paulding County, Ohio, your episode number 4. Sheriff John Hinton from Morrow County was episode number 3. He was also in the studio. We're glad to have you over here. How's your day going?
It's going good. I had a good drive up here. Weather's nice. Nice drive.
It is. We're ready for spring. You know, we're right in that time period as we're recording today where it could be 70 degrees 2 days ago and sunny, and then 30 degrees with a freeze advisory, and then maybe 2 inches of rain tomorrow. So we're getting right into the middle of that and listening to some talk radio on the way in this morning, talking about some just spring weather that's upon us here, where we're going to have those, strong winds, potential, tornadoes as things move across our part of Ohio. And I think you just had to deal with that. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that after we left our Buckeye State Sheriff's Association board meeting just a week or so ago, and you had some weather come through your town. But let's just get started like this. Scott, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about Scott Kent? Who are you? Where are you from? Where did you go to school? Just tell us, who is Scott Kent?
Well, I was born and raised in Crawford County, right outside the city of Bucyrus. Been there all my life, 50 years. Went to Colonel Crawford High School, graduated in 1992. After that, I did factory work for a little bit, Tipton Roller Bearing Company. That was why I was going through the Peace Officers Academy. And I was a reserve officer, a special deputy for Crawford County Sheriff's Office in 1994. In 1995, I got a job offer to be a deputy on the road, and I accepted it. It's been fun ever since.
It's been, isn't it? I mean, I firmly believe it's a calling. Some people just say, this is a job. I see an advertisement. I want to go apply this job. It must be cool. And, those of us that are called into the profession that just find that, that burning sensation to get up and come to work every day. I worked in some jobs and went to college a little bit before I came into law enforcement. But when I was given the opportunity for myself getting hired, I just knew it, right? I mean, it's got hired into our jail. It was a small jail. We had about 30 inmates a day at that time. A really unique environment for a 20-year-old person, but it was just like I knew it. I don't know if I really talked about it. I don't know if anyone said, you're it for this job. I just kind of knew out of the other jobs I had, this is the one that I want to keep coming back to every day. And then nearly 3 decades later, it's amazing how that works out versus people just come because they think it's a job that sounds cool. If you don't really have that extra call, you just kind of fizzle away and work your way out of it. And
I don't know that I really had a calling. Well, I don't know. I don't know that that's what I wanted to do when I first got into it. There was a jailer that his son was a friend of mine in school, and I would stop up to the jail once in a while, and I'd talk to him after I got off work, whether I was working at McDonald's or Timken or something like that. I'd stop up and talk to Charlie Jones there, and he's like, well, what are you going to do with yourself? He always called me son a lot of times, too. Hey, son, what are you going to do? And I don't know. He says, do something good for the community. And that was kind of my transition into the sheriff's office at that point. That's when I went through the academy and then got hired full time, and I've really enjoyed it. I've been a lieutenant. I've worked in dispatch. I've kind of filled some of the other roles around the office, and it's been really enjoyable.
Good. Let's build on that a little bit as far as some of the assignments that you've had. You just spoke a little bit about them. How'd you progress from that day when you were given that opportunity to start the sheriff's office to when you determined that you had an interest in becoming the sheriff of Crawford County? How did that look for Scott Kent as you moved your way, we'll say, up the ladder or through laterally to different specialized divisions within the agency? What all kinds of things have you done at the sheriff's office?
When I was first hired, I was actually put into dispatch. I was hired for the road, but there were some dispatchers I had to take some time off there. So I got like a 2-week crash course on how to dispatch, and then I was cut loose on my own. And, the way the office was laid out at the time at the old sheriff's office, the jail booking office was right outside that. So my first night dispatching by myself, we had a bad crash, and it required 2 life flights to be brought in, plus all the fire departments that we dispatched for. So I had to yell out into the booking office, and I'm like, hey, I need some help in here. And one of the corrections officers come in there, and they kind of helped me out with it. I suppose I probably did that for 6-8 weeks or something, and then I moved on to FTO on the road. A supervisor position opened up around 2002, and that's when I was promoted to lieutenant. So I was overseeing afternoon daily operations on the road, and it just kind of went from there. I talked to the previous sheriff, Sheriff Schauber, 2011, somewhere there, and are you going to run for another term? And he says, well, I don't know. Let me think about it, and I'll get back with you. So he come back and he says, no, I'm a retire. So that's when I put in to run for a sheriff.
Yeah, it's fun stuff, man. You talked a little bit about jumping in and dispatching. Folks might not really realize that. They see the deputies out in the cars, have the word sheriff down the side, all these things. Might not understand that sometimes they have to jump in and help. Maybe it's in the jail for those of us that have jails. Maybe it's in communications for those of us that control our dispatch centers. Just yesterday, just at the end of the day, we had a pretty serious motor vehicle crash happen here in the county, and the deputies are out to go do what they're doing. And it just happened to be in transition from when we had 2 dispatchers down to 1 before the next 2 come in. So where do I go? I mean, I can go to the crash and help out there, but yesterday I thought I'd be more effective in dispatch, and it's intimidating, man. I mean, when you go in there, you'll do it every day, and the phones are ringing. You got to call for help, and you got to talk on the radio and do all these things. I mean, it is a very, very difficult position to be good at that job. Whether you refer to it as communications officer or dispatcher, all kind of falls under the same thing for me. And man, when you have good ones, they're important people. So it's multifaceted, isn't it, when you learn all those different roles of the job, preparing you to become the sheriff of the organization.
Yeah, that and the technology has just advanced so much since I did my time in dispatch. I mean, we still typed our log entries on a typewriter, and now some of the dispatchers that are there, they've never used a typewriter. They know the computers. They can do all that, but I'm not trained on the technology up there, so it's difficult for me to help out. I'll go up there to, if there's a storm, I'll go up and say, hey, can I help out? And they're like, yeah, stay out of our way. So I just kind of sit back and watch, and it's kind of a neat thing to see it all come together, and them, watching several monitors at one time and talking on the phone, on 911, on the radio.
Yeah, it is funny. I called, for the State Highway Patrol, the deputies on scene said, send us a trooper if you can to the crash, and so I dialed down there, and when the dispatcher answered the phone, I told her who I was and what we needed. I said, I'm really trying hard not to screw anything up here, but I'm trying to get some help. She laughed at me. She said, but again, when you don't sit in there every day and you're as well educated at it, it can be a little bit intimidating. So talk to us, Scott, a little bit about where you attended the police academy at, and how did that process go for you?
I attended North Central Technical College, I believe it's now North Central State, over in Mansfield, over in Richland County, and it was a good experience.
Good deal. How many years total you have? I wasn't jotting anything down or do the math for people that are driving down the road across the country. Listen to this very popular podcast on episode number 4 with Sheriff Kent. How many years total law enforcement experience do you have then?
29 years. I have 30 years in January of 25.
Man, what a landmark. That is fantastic. And then how many terms, I know this, the folks at home might not, how many terms have you been elected sheriff?
This is finishing up my 3rd term.
Finishing number 3, and then this is an election year for us. Are you on the ballot for that?
I am on the ballot.
Nice, very good. So going for term number 4. Sheriff, talk to us about any hobbies that you have. Is there anything you're into? You got some kids at home. What kind of things does Scott Kent do outside of being the sheriff? Anything you care to share?
Yeah, I got 3 children. I have one that's still living at home, and it's kind of a joy to follow them around to their sporting events, school events, stuff like that. I've got a daughter that's a sophomore named Bucyrus, and she's playing softball right now. She's into play. She's into the band. Other 2 boys, they're out of the house. My oldest one is a police officer in a neighboring city. My middle child, he is a senior at OU down at Athens, and he'll be graduating here in May with his degree in nursing. And, he's got a job lined up too. So I'm proud of all 3 of my kids.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I have 2 boys that are college age. One's finishing up, one's a sophomore. And it's just really neat to see how they grow up, and start to become adults and make their own decisions. And as parents, makes us pretty proud to see them succeed. Let's talk a little bit about the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. That's the name of the podcast, the sponsor of the podcast today. And talk a little bit about your involvement with the board. I know where you sit on the board. Talk a little bit about your current position, what that looks like, positions that you might have held to this point throughout BSSA.
I'm currently the treasurer on the executive board. Before that, I was executive secretary and district director. And the BSSA has just been a great resource for me. When I was elected sheriff, I had 18 years experience on the road. I thought, I think I know how this office runs. Well, you sit down on the other side of that desk and you're like, I don't know how to handle this. But the BSSA has been a great resource to me. Bob Cornwell, executive director. Anytime I got a question, I give him a call. He knows the answer. He doesn't have to look it up. It doesn't matter if it's an ORC code. He usually rattles that code off, and I'm making notes as I go. But him, Mona, both, they've been a great resource of information, and they've really helped me progress and get better as sheriff during the last 12 years.
Yeah, it's such a great resource. They are. You and I were elected at the same time, so we were fortunate enough to spend 3 weeks together as we go through what we call new sheriff school, which is statutory for people that are elected to the office, that you have to go through this required period of training. But as on top of or along with Bob and Mona and their expertise with the association, something that I have found to be huge for me in my growth as a sheriff, and rather you're a new sheriff, like you said, that thinks you have it figured out, or today I would consider us tenured sheriffs that there's still a lot of questions that you have. So I have those mentors for me, people that I've grown close to and I trust their opinions, and I might reach out to these other sheriffs. So do you have any comment on, relationship building or networking? And we could go back to those 3 weeks of sheriff school, or as we've continued with our involvement with the board of directors and you meet and get to know new sheriffs from different parts of the state. I think that's a really huge component with BSSA as well.
It is. It very much is. I didn't know you, Jason, when we went through new sheriff school together, but, that 3 weeks that we're together, and then that 3rd week, all the sheriffs in Ohio come together. So it is a good networking opportunity. I know there's been a lot of people that I'll call. Sheriff Frazier down in Jackson County, I usually give him a call if I got a question. Sheriff Hinton from Morrow County, Sheriff Fry from Wyandotte, your neighboring sheriffs. I reach out and call quite a bit if I just need to bounce an idea off someone. I like getting the feedback from someone in a similar position to me. So it's been helpful, and see a lot of sheriffs kind of come and go during my 12 years. But, one thing that I've I found out very quick is no matter who's going out and who's coming in, we all still have the same problems, and we all kind of rely on each other to, serve our county the best we can.
Yeah, and a lot of times we're presented with new situations. I mean, we've been around a long time where we've seen just about everything, but periodically you're tasked with something that's new, and by calling those resources, and if you start with your surrounding sheriffs, a lot of times you find someone that has dealt with your situation. A lot of times there's value in calling Bob Cornwell and say, hey, I have this new situation before me, and he knows a sheriff through his 41 years of serving in the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association that has dealt with it, and he can say, call this sheriff. They've dealt with that before. I've been the receiving end of some of those phone calls when sheriffs might say, hey, Bob Cornwell told me to call you. You've dealt with this issue before. And so we're just really networked together that way. Sheriff Randy Dodds recently had a devastating storm come through and a tornado that wiped out some of his area in Logan County at Indian Lake. And when that call goes out through the association for mutual aid, some folks may or may not know that there's an Ohio administrative code with the uniform and a car marking regulations for the state of Ohio sheriffs and deputies. And so we all look the same from a uniform perspective, or we should, and we all look the same from a car marking perspective, or we should. And when we show up in those communities to assist other sheriffs that need help, and I've been on that side of it before, isn't that just amazing to see how far people come to help us when we get into a situation where we all look the same, we all kind of follow the same, and the mission for everyone, really protecting people and their property, is just all the same across Ohio.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a neat episode to maybe follow up with Sheriff Dodd about his tornado. The email come out from the BSSA asking for additional manpower and help down in that county. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to help out because I had a tornado that same night come through my county, and we were kind of dealing with the after effects of that. That's something that's kind of stressful. You go out there and you see all this damage. You're like, how do I help these people? And then out of the blue, I received a phone call from Sheriff Everhart, Hardin County. He was kind of spearheading the scheduling down there in Logan County, and he's like, Scott, I've got plenty of people down here. I found out you had a tornado there as well. Do you need me to send manpower your way? Of course I didn't. It was a small area that was affected by that, but it's nice to get that phone call, or, we're all there to help each other out. And
it's pretty special, man. It's truly special. And try to give, as much, kudos to people as you can when they do send help. I talked about a mutual aid issue that I had a request into years ago. And one of the first phone calls that I got was from Jerry Green, who's a Mahoney County sheriff on an exact opposite side of Ohio for me, about 4.5 hour drive. And it was one of the first phone calls after that email went out. And he said, I know we're a long ways away, brother, but I'll send you anything I can. And I mean, that's just the kind of brother and sisterhood that I think we see as sheriffs. Let's talk just a little bit more about you. What other associations might you be involved with, or appointments, committee appointments through in the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, or we at times recommend people for state boards that are appointed by governor's appointments and things. Anything else, Scott, for you that you are involved with as far as boards or appointments go with the association?
Well, I'll start with the association. I'm on the Carry Concealed Weapon Committee. Sheriff Riggenbach's the chair on that. Also on the Internal Affairs Committee. Unfortunately, I had to use the Internal Affairs Committee a couple of times, so I thought, I probably need to help out on this, offer something back to someone else, and that's one of the reasons I got on that committee. Outside of the BSSA, I have a special deputy who's a commander at North Central State for the academy, and he asked me to be an advisory board member for the criminal justice program. So I do that. We meet a couple times a year. I chair the Metridge Drug Task Force. It's a 10-county decentralized task force. The home office is in Richland County, and then there's 10 counties that participate in that. And my commission, it was a governor's appointment to the Attorney General's Ohio Organized Crime Investigation Commission. My appointment expired. I'm waiting to hear whether that's going to get renewed.
Sometimes things in Columbus might move at a snail's pace in comparison to how we would like to see them happen. That's good. Like to hear about your other involvements. Before we take the ad break, Scott, talk to me, tell the listeners a little bit about what your passion is for law enforcement. I like to say, what drives Scott Kent to get up every day, put this uniform on, and go serve your people?
One of the things I learned at working in a factory was it was the same job over and over and over. And you touched on it earlier where as a tenured sheriff, you still have new things thrown at you once in a while. And I think your day being broke up with some of that, I like learning new things. So that's what's kept me interested in it. I'm sure at one point I probably got bored with it a little bit and as the years build up, but this job is still exciting to me. I still have a purpose every morning when I wake up. I enjoy getting up and going to work every day. And that may be going to the office, starting out with a cup of coffee and just walking around and talking to your employees.
Absolutely. You heard it right here from Sheriff Scott Kent from Crawford County. We're going to listen to our sponsor advertisement right now. We'll be back after this to talk a little bit more about the sheriff's office there in Crawford County with Sheriff Kent. Back after this break.
This podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. The BSSA is in Columbus, Ohio, and was established in 1931. The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association was formed to perpetuate an efficient organization of Ohio sheriffs and their deputies. BSSA provides an exchange of information pertaining to the duties, methods, and official practice of its members. The association also exerts such influence as may be necessary to bring about and preserve legislation in harmony with the needs of enforcement officials and the safety of the public. The BSSA supports the efforts of this podcast to promote Ohio sheriffs and deputies and their mission to serve and protect the citizens of Ohio.
Welcome back to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff Scott Kent from Crawford County. We're going to continue in. We heard a lot about Sheriff Kent and who he is and how he's got to where he's at. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Crawford County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff, talk to us about the size of your agency. Now, I think maybe start with your county's population. I think you're significantly bigger than we are over here in the flatlands of Paulding County up against the Indiana state line.
So our population of Crawford County is 42,000. Some industry in the county. The size of my office is 65 employees. I still kind of miss the old jail, but we have a facility that we've been in since 1998, which that causes some problems for us. We're starting to get where everything's starting to age and break, so we're kind of going through some of those hurdles at the time, some HVAC units, stuff like that.
Yeah, I hear you. When I started, probably as you did, we were in a sheriff's office here in Paulding that was built in 1876, and when I started in that facility, it still kind of looked like it was built in 1876. So as they modernized over the years, there's only so much you could do to move conduit and put electricity in and flow water and all the things that they did. We remodeled a building and took possession of that in 2007. So we're experiencing here from a budgetary perspective, kind of what you talked about. Some things since 2007 are starting to fail and need replaced, and it's part of maintenance, and I think our citizens expect us to keep our buildings maintained and operational, and so those are things that go along, with working with the county commissioners from a funding perspective, and working with those vendors that service your building. Talk to us a little bit, Scott, about persisting crime in Crawford County today. I think we're going to learn as this podcast grows and goes on that there's a lot of the same answers to this questions from different sheriffs. To your point earlier, we all kind of deal with the same things. What are some of the, or the most persistent crime, or some of the things that you're seeing from your perspective in Crawford County today?
We're probably no different than anyone else in the state. We're seeing a lot of drugs, seeing a lot of meth and fentanyl right now. Cocaine's starting to make kind of a comeback. I have heard cocaine for several years, but now we're starting to see some of that. Was glad to see the heroin kind of go away, but I'm not happy with what's going on with the drug situation. The meth obviously creates a kind of a dangerous environment, as people are wound up pretty tight when you interact with them, and a lot of times they're going to fight and they're going to cause problems in the jail when they're brought in. So we're going through that. We've seen a little bit of an increase actually in our sex crimes against juveniles. I don't know if it was everybody staying at home during COVID or what happened there, but it seems like we've seen quite a bit of that here lately as well.
Yeah. Do you have, you talked about problems in the jail with methamphetamine. A lot of our problems are mental health related. Folks that have an addiction to methamphetamine, when they come into our facilities, the problems that result from their addiction, for us, we see a lot of mental health. How about you?
Yeah, mental health. We're seeing a lot of that as well. And I think a lot of that goes along with the drugs. We have a good partnership with our community counseling local agency that's right across the street from us. We've actually worked on a partnership, a grant there that allows for them to be able to do like Zoom counseling with the inmates when they're in crisis. So that's been helpful to address some of those issues. But, grand jury, they come around and they get a tour to jail every once in a while. And I think a lot of them are amazed on how our booking areas of our jails are turning into a mental health facility. Because, we can't put those people in general population, which makes it difficult. And we have to, keep them closer. We can keep an eye on them and away from the other inmates in the jail.
Yeah, you're right. We all deal with those same issues. It doesn't matter the size of your jail population, from the largest jails in Ohio to small jails by population. We still have those situations. Yeah, I want to go back to something you said earlier about cocaine coming into play. It seems like we talk a lot as sheriffs or public speakers, and we're asked our opinions at times about drugs, and are drugs worse than ever? And I talk about the different drugs I've seen in my career, and I kind of wonder if these things aren't like bell-bottom jeans. They come in to be popular every so many years. People brings things back. And when I look at my law enforcement career, coming into it, and marijuana obviously was a prevalent drug that we dealt with. Cocaine was a prevalent drug. And then I started to see, crack cocaine, and thought that the world was ending and things were awful. And then we started to see heroin and tar heroin and powder heroin. And then I think kind of came along the shake and bake methamphetamine and the Mountain Dew bottles along the roads, which were volatile. And now we're dealing with this crystal meth that has a straight flow to the southern border. I think that map has been painted by several people in higher positions than us, as it comes from China to Mexico and right up the highways across the borders. And we're all suffering with that. I don't care what part of the United States you're in, you are dealing with crystal methamphetamine that's got a straight line down to the border. And I think we absolutely are all dealing with that. And I expect that that's going to be almost the answer 100% of times when I ask that question. Talk to me a little bit, if you will. Are there any hurdles that you feel that you are experiencing in law enforcement? Anything just kind of tough to deal with or navigate through the criminal justice process?
No, I don't know that I really have any hurdles in the law enforcement part of it. A lot of the hurdles that I see are probably in the jail right now with addressing the mental health situation. Medical expenses just seem to keep climbing, and it's hard to budget for that. You can't budget for it because you don't know what your inmates next year, who's going to get sick, who's not. It's costly, and it makes it hard to balance that budget sometimes. I think I talked about it earlier, some of the things starting to break down. We have an HVAC system, and I've got several units that we're struggling to keep running right now. So the commissioners and I are looking at a solution for that as well. I've got a parking lot that needs paved. So, there's some building maintenance that needs to happen, and we're all sitting down discussing that right now to see if we can get that accomplished.
And I think, would you agree, a lot of people probably don't think, they see the sheriff, they know you're the sheriff, and they reflect you back to driving that marked car down the road and, writing tickets and arresting people. Do you suppose a lot of people understand the administrative side of what the sheriff is, to your point of what you just talked about, maintaining your building, working with your commissioners to establish a budget, which you have to project, talking about medical expenses for inmates? We're required statutorily to pay those fees. So we have people that come into our booking process that have medical issues that, let's just say, they don't really realize because their medication is some illicit drug, and once they clean out and detox in our facilities, then our medical staff starts to get their health figured out and some medications. We're required to pay for all those things. And like you said, it's a gamble when you go to set your budget before whenever your fiscal year is. For us, it's January 1, December 31. So when we start to prepare for that about October and work with our commissioners, and we're looking at that budgeted line item that we pay for those expenses, it's a guess, isn't it?
It is. And I think a lot of people, as I give those tours, they are amazed. They don't understand why the inmate's insurance on the outside won't cover them on the inside. They don't understand why Medicare or VA benefits all stop when someone comes to jail. It's hard to explain to them. Unfortunately, it's the county's burden. It's their responsibility to provide medical coverage for that inmate, keep them safe and healthy.
Absolutely. Sheriff Mike Hellman from Hancock County chairs for us what's called the Community Corrections Committee for the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. And Sheriff Hellman does a fantastic job building relationships with the state agencies and bringing them into our committee meetings, working on these very issues that you talked about. And really appreciate the committee that he runs, because it seems like he's getting the right people at the table right now to listen to these concerns around the state and hopefully address some things. Let's switch the topic a little bit to training, continual professional training that we deal with. Every peace officer in the state of Ohio is required to have 24-hour CPT, and for some they might say that's it, and for some they might say that's too much. How do you like the CPT structure right now? Any good, bad? Any comments on CPT?
I'm okay with the CPT structure. One thing I'd like to see is for the training, the mandated training videos come out a little bit sooner. That way my people aren't struggling to get those hours in. We send a lot of people through training every year. A lot of those, I find myself now looking to make sure that training I'm sending someone to, it falls into something approved for CPT, which helps out quite a bit towards the end of the year. That we start calculating those hours up, making sure everybody's got the training.
Yeah, credit OPATA, Tom Quinlan, the new director out there. And the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy, I think they're doing a really good job reviewing curriculums that we're drafting and sending to them to get certified for CPT credit hours. I'm with you, Sheriff. When we're looking at training and where people are going, we're putting a lot more effort into trying to get people there if it has a CPT number attached to it than maybe some training that doesn't. Not that we won't get the training for our folks that we need, but that CPT is important. Talk to me a little bit. As sheriffs, we're called CLEO. We're the Chief Executive Law Enforcement Officer in our counties. It's pretty special. Talk to me a little bit about what you like most about having that position as the elected sheriff, the Chief Law Enforcement Executive Officer in your community.
Well, I like being involved in the community. I like getting out and talking to people and helping people through those problems. I hold a monthly meeting with my local police chiefs and some state partners, auditor's office, Department of Commerce, Attorney General's office, Ohio Traffic Safety Office. They all attend those meetings, and I don't know that we solve the world's problems in there, but it's kind of like the BSSA, networking and knowing what's going on in your community. A citizen comes in and has a problem, they expect us to help them through that problem. So it's important that we kind of share that with our partner agencies so everybody's kind of on the same page of, hey, here's what's going on here. This may start happening in your jurisdiction as well.
How about law enforcement in general, Scott? Is there anything that you can think of through 3 decades that you would like to change or maybe see a little bit different?
Boy, that's kind of a tough question, especially, growing up through the sheriff's office. I just kind of know that this is what's expected of me. I don't know if there's really anything that I could change or ask for differently from the community. I know a lot of communities had some problems with, say, George Floyd situation went on. I didn't have that in Crawford County. I had a lot of public support from our community. Very blessed with the community that we have there.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Let's talk specifically about the office of sheriff. In Ohio, we're statutory We follow what the state law says and what the statute spells off for sheriffs, and a lot of obligations that we have and things that we're required to do. Anything that you really, really like about it, and I kind of asked that question a different way earlier, or anything specifically that you would like to add or see changed with specifically the statute, the office of sheriff?
I don't know that I really have an opinion either way on that. And there is a lot of obligations I never knew coming into this position. And I still get a lot of phone calls at night with questions from staff or, hey, Sheriff, we got this going on. Here's kind of how we think we're going to handle it, but we wanted to bounce it off you first. I appreciate the staff reaching out to me. At the end of the day, I'm responsible for the decisions they make, and you got to appreciate staff that are going to look out for you as well.
Yeah, I say a lot of times the buck stops here, so you got to call. Last night, my wife and I walked into the restaurant just to sit down to order, and I get a phone call. I have to step out. She's used to that at this point. I think that's pretty special, that we're in a position where we can do those things. And we talk a lot as sheriffs, and at times a sheriff may check out at noon on a Friday, and is it a 40-hour week job? Is it a 60-hour week job? But you might check out a little early one day, and, but you might have a meeting on Wednesday night with a township, or you might get some phone calls. And so, we don't punch a time clock, if you will, but, if you want to be a successful sheriff, specifically in the size counties that we run or are a part of, you have to be there, you have to be accessible, and you have to understand the fact that the buck stops here. And I do think myself that that's pretty special. Sheriff, talk to me. Is there anything special or unique going on within the Crawford County Sheriff's Office that you'd like to talk about? Any programs going on, any good work being done?
We just had a training provided by Corsa, a Milo training, and I think we did that for 3 to 4 weeks, and we were able to get our road staff, our courthouse security, our school resource officers, and corrections officers through that. And simulator training, it went over really well. I actually had employees coming to me and saying, hey, this was a really good training. Can we do this again? So we're looking at doing something like that again next year, the simulator training. Special response team. We created a multi-agency special response team back around 2014. Each agency has their own people on the team. We're doing a lot of training with that team right now. Once a month, they're doing 8 hours of training. Sometimes there's some stuff that comes up in between, but they're a pretty talented group of people. We were lucky, couldn't afford an armored vehicle for them. They all want a Bearcat armored vehicle. I'm like, I can't afford it. It's not in the budget. We kind of looked around a little bit, run into an opportunity with Brinks. We got a hold of Brinks, and we told them, hey, we're looking for an armored vehicle. We can't afford to go out and buy, this armored vehicle. They said, you know what, come up and get one of our bank trucks. So we did go up there and outfit one of those for the team. That truck's starting to get to where it's starting to nickel dime us, so we may have to look at something different. But yeah, just a lot of training opportunities going on right now at the office, sending people here or there. I think Ohio Tactical Officers Conference is coming up, the DARE Officer Conference, SRO conferences. So there's a lot of training opportunities right now.
There certainly is a lot of training that goes into what we do in our profession and to keep everybody sharp as they do their job serving the citizens. Well, Sheriff Kent, I would like to thank you for being a part of today's episode. We would like to thank the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association for their sponsorship. For Sheriff Scott Kent, I'm Jason Landers. I'll be right back here next month featuring another Ohio sheriff or deputy on the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Bob Cornwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, located in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. It was brought to you by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. With this podcast, we are striving to introduce you to sheriffs and deputies from around the state of Ohio and recognize their great work they do every day for the citizens of Ohio. For more information about our organization, Google Buckeye State Sheriff. Thank you.